Quieres frutos de mis manos, sin ver mi humanidad. Si gozas de mi trabajo, yo merezco igualdad.
Antes del amanecer dentro de este centro de empleo en Pasadena, California, un pequeño grupo de jornaleros preparan su día de trabajo. Pero en lugar de palas y martillos, para ellos las herramientas son una mezcladora de sonido.
Quiero que mi voz escuche los silencios jornaleros. Quiero que mi voz escuche el grito de libertad. Quiero que mi voz escuche como la razón del viento. Quiero que mi voz escuche la verdad de su existencia.
Una emisora de radio de California hecha por jornaleros y para jornaleros. Esta nueva plataforma busca informar, entretener y empoderar a los trabajadores que muchas veces no tienen espacio para expresarse.
En Radio Jornalera no restamos ni dividimos, sumamos corazones.
Que tu voz escuche.
Buenas tardes a todos y todas que se acaban de conectar a su programa Desde el Sur a través de Radio Jornalera. Muchas gracias por estar aquí en la radio del pueblo y para el pueblo. Esto es un programa donde vamos a estar hablando de política, fe y justicia y la unidad de negros y latinos que están pasando usualmente. Vamos a estar hablando de política, fe y cómo las comunidades y la importancia de trabajar en nuestras comunidades locales. So, I want to welcome everyone to Desde el Sur. Is a show that is transmitted, that is live in Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube as well. And we are so happy to have Archange Antoine, one of the best organizers in the whole entire country. Welcome, Archange, and welcome to Radio Jornalera.
Muchas gracias, Jorge, and gracias a todos. And that's the most Spanish you're going to get from me today.
And I also want to thank our radio coordinator, Jorge Torres, that's going to be in los controles. So thank you very much for being here. We're going to try to do this interview/conversations as much as powerful, inspire for all the folks that are listening to us and also the community. We want to make sure for people to get to know you. So I want to ask people to start share this link. If you're not able to listen to the whole interview, save it, listen into your office, but it is important to listen to this Spotify, to this audio, to this stream. We want to also encourage people in Facebook to share, to give us likes, to give us comments. You know, we're going to be able to read some comments today as well. So, Archange Antoine, tell us a little bit about, who you are, a little bit of your background. I know you come from Haiti. Tell us a little bit about how was those childhood memories that you have.
Yeah. I was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and my family are from Haiti. We grew up here in America, me, my sister, and my brother. But our whole lives were shaped, I would say, by immigration, our family story, by violence, from violence against the government, by poverty. But also our family was shaped by faith and resiliency and hopefulness and the belief that all people should be are created equal and we should be treated that way. My family came in the 70s during the Duvalier era. My family were victimized by the government, and one of my great uncles was killed during that time, which kind of led my family to start leaving the country years afterwards. And my mother and my father ended up in America, where my father got sick and suffered from schizophrenia when I was in my mom's stomach. And so you're talking about a young boy growing up, never knowing my father. I always say mental health took my father, but my mom raised us all to just stay involved in the church and to believe and to know that just because we didn't have all the resources and the money, that didn't mean that we didn't have a good life. We had a lovable life. My mom worked very hard to make sure she supported us and took care of us. and that is sort of like the fundamentals of who I am. And so I'm a combination of my family story and also a desire to be the change I want to see in the world.
So you went to Elizabeth High School.
I went to Elizabeth, all schools, and right before high school, I moved to Roselle. My brother graduated from high school in Elizabeth, and I graduated from Roselle High School. And so, right in the 8th grade, going into the 9th grade, I moved to Roselle. And Roselle was the best decision for us because it kind of took me away from the Elizabeth life, and it brought me to a position where I didn't know a lot of people, and I got a really chance to focus on school.
So tell me a little bit about how was Archange in those high school days.
Oh man, high school Archange. It was hard for me because I got asthma. I didn't know what was happening with me. I just couldn't breathe. I couldn't exercise. I didn't know anything. And at the time, everybody was like, "Oh, you're fine," and I knew something was wrong with me. So I was a big athlete. I was a track runner at the time. So I stopped all sports because I just couldn't breathe. And then finally, after finally saying, "Mom, I need to go to the hospital," I got diagnosed with asthma, and they gave me an inhaler. And then slowly but surely, I came back. I ran track all throughout high school.
But it was more like to, the young kid that you was more towards the books and towards math or towards the sports, towards girls. How was that? Who was Archange back there?
I think I was a mix because I love running track. I love running cross country, but also I love to joke around. A lot of my friends, we crack jokes with each other. Some of my friends were artists. They used to try to rhyme and sing, and some of them love other sports. But I was a really naive kid, just having fun, playing around. I had a couple secret girlfriends, but for me, nothing was that serious. It was all about having fun, enjoying life, and making sure that I kept my friends protected.
And then you went to college. Tell me a little bit about college.
Yeah, so it was actually the way I got to college was because I didn't know. I didn't have any of my family that went to college.
You were the first.
I was the first. My sister, she started going to county college, then she went back to working. But it was a girl I was dating, and she said, "Where are you going to college?" And I said, "Where are you going to college?" And she said, "Oh, I'm going to Stevens." And I said, "Well, I'm going to apply to Stevens." She said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "What do you want?" She said, "Engineer." I said, "I want to be an engineer too." So because I was trying to impress her, I was trying to make sure I applied to college because every day she was like, I don't hear you talk about your applications. I don't talk about this. So finally, I only applied to 2 schools, her school, which is Stevens Institute, and then I applied to Rowan. And literally, Steven said, "Why did you even apply here? Because you don't have no background. You didn't take no calculus. You didn't take this, that, third." And then Rowan said, "All right, you want to come? Let's give you an interview." I went to a couple interviews and they accepted me.
When you were little, what you used to say when they ask you that question of what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. So when I was young, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but deep in my heart, like I used to love watching the good cops on TV and Chuck Norris, when Chuck Norris had to get the bad guys, yeah, like Rambo, I used to always like, okay, but it in my community, the cops treated us like animals. But on TV, the cops was the good guys. So I wanted to be a cop, but I didn't want to be a cop from
You wanted to be a cop of the Hollywood cop.
Yeah, I wanted to be a Hollywood cop because I thought cops were the ones that, and the older I got, I said, no, I just can't do this.
So you start seeing some racial injustice in your own town.
Yeah, I mean, as young as I can remember being in middle school, the cops used to drive their cars on the sidewalks when we were playing we didn't have basketball courts in Elizabeth, so we used to play on the sidewalks on the street, and they used to threaten us. They used to run after us, and I used to tell everybody we were more cool with the drug dealers than the cops. The drug dealers, at least they gave us pizza. They talked to us nice when stuff was happening. They said, "Go home." The cops were they treated us like we didn't belong there. Like they didn't want us there. And I never met a cop when I was a kid who talked to me. who said, "How you doing? How's your
And
day?"
how was the community? More blacks or whites or browns? How was
The
the
community
community?
was majority black, and then you had a few Latinos. Elizabeth is not the Elizabeth now, but black, African American, Caribbean, and Puerto Rican, Dominican, with a couple of
So
Ecuadorians
growing
and
up,
Colombians.
so growing up in this neighborhood, telling me that you were, you were more getting more friendly with drug dealers. What do you think that prohibited you to go that route? Because I imagine that you have this, you get into the point of your life when you make choices and you said, I can either go this route or I can either go this route. What makes
Hmm.
you? When do you think was that moment that makes you take that decision and say, I'm gonna go this route?
Yeah, but I think it's like Hollywood. Hollywood makes it seem like, oh, there's drug dealers. Either you're going to be a drug dealer or not. But who are the drug dealers? There are people in our school. They're our family. They're our friends. They're people who went to church who no longer in church. And then not every drug dealer is the same person, right? Some people are just selling a little something just to pay for a bill,
To be
right?
cool.
And it's sort of be cool. And then some people are like, this is what they're doing to survive. So for me, I never met anyone who sold drugs in my neighborhood who forced us, who encouraged us. If anything, the older ones were the ones that said, go home, there's issues and there's problems. And then they supported us to go to school. They wanted us to stay on track. So for me, they were part of the community. They knew what they were doing, but they were also very protective of us. I remember on so many occasions living on Cherry Street and being on Elm Street in Elizabeth, folks would tell me, go home. They were scared of my mom. They didn't want no problems with my mom, right? But also, they were embarrassed when adults saw them selling drugs. There was a little different. But when I moved to Roselle, it was different because there wasn't a lot of that happening where we lived in Roselle. I would say it was a little more safe. I mean, you had your issues, fights and stuff, but I never felt that I had to choose that route. I always felt that I knew I was going to be successful. I knew I was going to take all these experiences and let to shape me. So I would say my community, my family, my church, my friends, we all kind of grabbed our motivation from all of our experiences and our desire to not give up.
So you go to college, you graduate. What was your major?
I was a law and justice major. One of the things that I realized, I said, I didn't want to become a cop, but I wanted to know my rights and I wanted to know the law because I wanted to protect my friends from being hurt. When I was in college, we always made a commitment that we will come back home to encourage our friends, in Linden and Elizabeth and Roselle, just because we said we went to college, but we want to make sure other people have opportunities. And I remember my life changed because I just finished finals and me and my three friends, we went to Elizabeth to talk to our friends, and the cops pulled behind our car. And I said, oh, here they go. So we were trying to leave. They blocked our car from moving. And what ended up happening is they end up getting out their car, dragging us out of our car, slamming us against the vehicles, and handcuffs on us because they thought we were selling drugs. They checked the car illegally. And guess what? They found nothing. But you know what they still did? Arrested us.
And why do you think that happened?
Because it was as old as I was becoming. I was a young man. I was maybe 18 at the time, maybe 19. It was the same conditions in Elizabeth. The police departments looked at black communities and poor communities and brown communities like they were a threat. And on top of that, the New York Times was doing an investigation on the Elizabeth Police Department and found out, and they had to crack this case, and the FBI had to come because the Elizabeth Police Department had a piece of the police department called the Family, which was white cops planting drugs on black and
Black community.
Latinos. And that article you can still find. So for me and my brother and my friends, we were all part of that mix of officers locking up people and falsely arresting them.
And it is a discrimination within inside of the black community, like in our Latino community, right? Like Colombians, Lucenguera, get along with Ecuadorians and Mexicans with Salvadorians, and we still have that. And is the same thing in the Black community, or it is okay to be Black African American, or it is okay to be, you're from Haiti, you're from Africa, like you still have that division, like with the inside of the.
Yeah. Well, number one, I think United States is a very unique country because we are a group of people with different ethnic backgrounds and nationalities and so-called race coming together, living on top of each other in a nation that doesn't necessarily, with all of our challenges. So I would say within the African American community, or within the Black community, you would have folks who are Pan-Africanism, right? They believe that we are unified across the globe, whether you're Asian, you're Latino, whether you're African American, you're Caribbean. It's important for us to stay together. But then you have fashions who believe that, nah, it ain't about Africans around the world, but it's about us here at home. Then you have those who believe that, oh, I don't see race. Then you have conservatives and liberals, and you have so many people who divide. I mean, for me, I believe in the importance of the African diaspora seeing our joint challenges, because as oppressed people and people who are at war with white supremacy in America, that you have no other options to be divided, right? If you're divided, you have no power. And if you have no power, you don't get nothing. And so we have to be able to put aside some of the differences in order to have a unified interest.
So you talk about white supremacy and power. We're gonna get there, and that's when this conversation starts to like me a little bit more. But I want to go back a bit, and why, after you start seeing this some racial injustice in your own town, you start going to college, you probably start seeing more news, and it's happening. It's not just in New Jersey, but it's happening all across the country. So what makes that decision of you saying, now I'm going to organize, I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something, right? And I asked you this, and I wanted to touch this because I've been hearing over and over lately from more people that's telling me, right, this thing of when are you going to do something different that is not just taking people to the streets, it's not just doing marches, it's not just doing this. And I've been hearing all that, and I also knew organizers that are coming to the movement that are also thinking, how can we do something different? So explain a little bit about what makes you to go in the organized world, but also why did you make that decision to become an organizer?
Yeah, well, I was organizing without even knowing that was called organizing. When I got to college, I was really inspired by workers that I thought were being taken advantage of. Most of the workers were African American, and if they spoke out, their jobs could be in jeopardy. So I said, let us know, and we'll do the speaking out. We'll be the doing. We'll call out the company. They work for us. We pay for their salaries. But I didn't know. I just thought going to a meeting, raising up issues, raising up awareness was just the thing that you do from the bottom of your heart. But then I just didn't realize that a lot of people were scared to do that. A lot of people were nervous to speak up and talk back and push back on administration. But for me, my mom was so against us speaking out and talking about what's happening in politics because of their experiences in Haiti. So when my mom wasn't there, I really got an opportunity to be involved and to get engaged and to really push up. So for me, I was a naive 18-year-old that wanted to stand for people's rights. And I did it, but I went to every single organization. And literally that began my experience with how to bring people together, how to make us work together, how to win an issue when I didn't know it. And I remember one of my professors saying, Archange, you're very political. And I was so confused because I was like, I don't even understand politics. I don't know the difference between a Republican and a Democrat. But what he was trying to tell me was, when you are bringing people all together and educating them and speaking out and trying to take a stance, it is political. It ain't Democrat, it ain't Republican, but it's a political activity that you're
It's not a
doing.
political party.
Yeah, it's not a political party. And from there, I didn't think I would be. I thought I wanted to go in higher education. I got accepted to the University of New Orleans in the higher ed program. They paid for everything. So that was my track. I thought I wanted to work for a university.
Interesting.
And so I didn't have any plan to organize. And then until I came back from Katrina, I lost everything in Hurricane Katrina. I was homeless in Dallas, Texas with the family. It was one of the worst experiences, depressed. And I came back to New Jersey. And that's when I made a decision to stay focused on my faith and to be committed to my work with God. And from there, I started to learn a little more about organizing.
So something that struggles you, make you take this path, that makes you feel uncomfy, that take you out of you essentially emotionally side of it as well, that makes you go to God and also start to realize that we need to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you talk about power? What's power? Explain it to us. What's power? When you say power, what is that?
Well, what's power? Martin Luther King always said that power is the ability to get people who want to say no to say yes. And so I think in organizing, we talk about it as organized people, organize money. But at the end of the day, whenever you're trying to achieve a goal in this organizing, this arena, when you're trying to move an issue, when you're trying to change people's life, when you're trying to give people hope, when you're trying to make sure that you are able to push an agenda that is rooted in people, that's rooted in justice, that's rooted in humanity, you're going to need power. And it can't just be speaking. It can't just be a good heart and being a good person. It requires you to do some active work in building relationships with people that you traditionally would never build relationships with. And most of our people, we leave power on the table because we want to stay in our own box, right? We want to stay just with Black. We want to stay just with Latino, just with Ecuadorians, just with Haitians, just with Nigerians, just with African Americans. And we leave power on the table because other people in our community are going through the same thing. And we need to find a way, which is the hardest thing to do. Our people don't want to step out their box, but to achieve the goal, you got to step out your box. And it's always the catch-22. And that's why organizing is such a hard job to do, because you're working with people who want the goal, but they don't want to go through the process to get there.
Exactly. So can we still fight your faith, and can you still fight for justice?
Can you still fight your faith? Elaborate what you mean by
Your
that.
faith, like you still think that you can go to church, that you can learn about God, that you can learn about the Bible, you can do all these things, and then you still can you still fight for justice? Because I know there is some churches that they just want to do the God side of it, the to read the Bible and to go deep in the Bible, and then when you talk about justice, then they start saying no, go on the streets, no.
Yeah, Jorge, you touched on a very important conversation that I think most people of faith need to be having, whether you're Jewish, you're Muslim, you're Christian, you're Buddhist, whether you just believe in traditional and indigenous traditions. I think it's just the importance is, what does my faith say about justice, about humanity, not from a theological perspective and not just from a educational or academic perspective, but what is the call for us to do the work, right? And so for me, if I could be frank and honest, a lot of the faith traditions, especially in my tradition, Christian traditions, have embraced a distorted version of the gospel of Jesus Christ. A lot of what they practice is a capitalistic form of Christianity instead of a revolutionary, radical side of Jesus's call for us to stand with the least of these.
So if this is true and real, and it is a way to do it, I was reading this article, and this is so interesting because since I left Fate in New Jersey, I haven't read much about
Shame,
justice
shame.
and da 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 da. But this is so important, and I wanted to ask you if that's real. Then explain to me and explain to our audience why. Like, how can you explain this? Like, how would you rephrase this? In Detroit is around 4,000 churches, and is one of the most violent cities in United States of America. It should be, if it is so many churches, it should be the heaven of something that is like the sample of putting faith and putting first our community, putting first our childs. Like, why is one of the violence in Detroit? What Detroit is one of the violent city in North America with 4,000 churches, one of the cities that has more churches in the whole United States.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So I think before we can give a critique of the church, we also have to give a critique of America. Detroit belongs to the United States of America. The United States of America goes around the world and say we are the greatest country in the world. We have the American dream that you can grow, you can be at work. We solve all issues. We stand with our people. Detroit is part of America. So if Detroit is having issues of violence and issues of economic depression, right, and issues of jobs and opportunities for the people who live there, then that's a critique on America. Why is America not doing anything about that? Right? The same thing with every major city. We cannot talk about how great, Jorge can't talk about how great of a father you are when you got 10 kids that you neglect. And so my point is just saying, number one, we have to critique the country that we live in. And number two, the churches have a responsibility to work in the community and to step outside the doors of the congregations to connect with where the violence is happening. And what happens in our churches is our churches like to stay on the inside where it's comfortable and do service, but they don't want sometimes to connect with those in the community, especially the communities where
the violence is happening. You're saying that we have a criminal justice system that is not working. You're saying that it's not responsibility of churches, it's not responsibility of the community, it's a responsibility of the system that is not working.
Yeah, and what I'm saying that we have a country that has neglected a vast majority of populations in this community. You can first start off as looking at the native Indians and the indigenous community. You can secondly look at the African American community who's been here for hundreds of years, and to this day they continue to suffer under the subjugation. You can look at the Latino community, which we can talk about the different fractions, but when you look at marginalized communities, you can still see areas of systematic oppression happening, and you can see violence. And when you have economic pressure on these communities, you're going to have violence. There's not whenever we talk about entering into a recession as a nation, the police and the economists are always aware that there is going to be an increase in violence. But when you have communities where young Black boys are 30% of the population can't work, right? And you have levels of school to prison pipeline, and you have the psychological issues, you got the trauma that's happening, and then you have violence. Then where's the support that America is giving those communities? It's the same thing as the opioids. When you had white people who were dying on the streets and lives were being ravished, they didn't go in there and start beating them down their head and throwing them in jail. They came up with a program specifically targeting those who are under the pressures of the opioids, who are hurting them in their jobs in every aspect of their lives. And what we're saying to America is we cannot focus on one group of people and leave everybody else hanging.
But this has been since the segregation and the division and oppression and exclusion. Does that has to be something with white supremacy? Do you think we still have white supremacy in United States of America?
Absolutely. If you looked at the Supreme Court recently, they had a discussion about the laws that were created. And one of the conversations was, at the creation of our Constitution, it was understood that it was being developed with a racialized lens. That when they said all men are created equal, that excluded a lot of people. It included black people. And
And
why?
women.
And women. And we can talk about a whole lot of group of people who were excluded throughout the Constitution. But the point is saying at the heart of the foundation of this country, it was white supremacy. White supremacy is one of the most silent killers in the world. It wants to be hidden, but it is an aspect of all things. And at the spectrums, you have white supremacy, and you have whiteness, and then you have black inferiority and indigenous inferiority, and you have and then you have at the cast of the bottom. And so for me,
and then you have black and browns and other ones that wants to be wise, or they want to be part of the elite.
And that's what white supremacy does. White supremacy says whiteness is so good, try to get up that way,
Trying to be like me,
even though we will never accept you. And so what you had in America, you had white, let's just be honest. Whiteness and race is a social construct. It was created. It just created. So it created, but it's also real implications. So when you have whiteness, it means that you have Jews who are ethnically Jewish saying, I want to be white. You had Indians from India saying, how do I become white? You had Chinese trying to become white. You have Latinos trying to become white. And then you have black people saying, I want to be white. And they're like, we see your color. Right?
Or they're wearing a shirt that says white lives matter.
So exactly, we're not even going to talk about him. But Jorge, so when we talk about in America, why the neglect and why the violence and why the vitriol against black people, because blackness is at the bottom of the racial lens. So everybody who's striving to be white, in order for you to prove your whiteness, you have to mistreat the black people, right? Look at the Irish. They came into the country. They were being mistreated. They built their whiteness on the backs of how they treated black people, and it wasn't good. And that's one of the reasons why I always say, well, if you come to America, you don't understand race. In Latin America, where is the indigenous community? How you treat the indigenous community in South America is an indication of where you are.
Just imagine this: that in Chile, they were this called indigenous community. It's called Mapuche, and for the first time in the history of Chile, and I will say of Latin America, it was a constitution that was voted to include indigenous communities, and they lose. So that shows how much conscious we have about it, right? And where we are. But let me get back to this, because I wanted to ask this question that I had. Most people think, and most people are always talking about this and saying that because of Trump, and when Trump went to power and he became a president, that's when we discovered that white supremacy, racism. Is that true? Do you believe that because of Trump, all this is happening in the United States?
Absolutely not. I mean, I think that from a political lens, we haven't seen anyone like Trump in a long time. And the thing is that it's not that what Trump was doing, it was how open Trump was doing it, right? He had groups saying, "Hell Trump," right? He was pretty much clear of his relationships with the white supremacy groups, right? So I would feel that aspect. Now, but everything that Trump was doing, with the exception of, January 6th, everybody's been doing that. Yeah, so many presidents who were how they were treating immigrants,
or
how
the
they were
United States was doing the same thing that happened in January 6th in our own countries. And
we're not even going to talk about that Americans' hypocrisy, right? We do January 6th all throughout the world, but we don't like it being done in our own house, right? We like to play with other people's governments and do coups d'etats and support mobilization against democratic governments like Haiti, right? But when somebody gets involved in our stuff, we have problems with that. But I will tell people that from a political lens, yeah, Trump was something we haven't seen in our modern times, right? And he was pretty open and bold with it. But all of these presidents have a history of working with white supremacists, serving white supremacy, and also making sure that they would give some of the talk about equality. But when you look at policies, mass incarceration, when you look at the fight for the indigenous communities still not getting some of their lands, lawsuits being pended for the hundreds of years, right? When you start seeing black and brown communities making sure that there's a wedge. One of the things that we have to talk about is black and brown communities have such a common interest. But because there is I believe that there's a desire for us never to work together. The day black and brown communities start to work together, this country starts to change overnight. And that's why those who are organizing to unify black and brown communities, it is such a hard job to do. It is painful. They're fighting you. They're arguing with you, saying it's not needed to do it. Okay, fine. But we all know that when you want to get something done in America, you got to partner with any people.
So you talk about mass incarceration, Archange, and that's something that's happening constantly in New Jersey, in Newark, Camden, Patterson, Trenton, Jersey City, Atlantic City, and Elizabeth. Some of the blue cities and some of the Democrat cities. And sometimes we think about, yes, Republicans are the one who's doing all these bad policies for our community. They don't care about us, blah, 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 blah. But those states has been Democrat for years, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also, some of those mayors has been also black. Mass incarceration, one of the higher cities in mass incarceration. What do you think about that? How was you reading?
Yeah, I think we have to look at it from two perspectives. And number one, I like what Nina Turner always says. Nina Turner, she's such my superhero. I love her. She's a fighter for justice out of Ohio, and she always says, just because they're blue doesn't mean they're one of us. And I feel like in New Jersey, most people know if you want to win in some of these cities, you have to be a Democrat. But just because you are a Democrat doesn't mean that you're about justice, you're about equality, you're about fairness, you're about equity. And some of these mayors and in these towns and these legislators, they're not about that work. And one of the things that we have to do a better job with our people, we have to let our people know just because they look like us doesn't mean they're for us, right? Because part of white supremacy, what it does is it finds people to pick and choose in our community. That's why you'll go to a community where vast majority are Mexicans and Ecuadorians and African Americans and Haitians, and they have a leader there who doesn't do anything for the people, right? They talk that stuff, but they're not. And so I think in New Jersey, we have a unique role to educate our people, to let them know that we have to be critical of people's policies, and we have to have a demand on what we want them to do. Not just, oh, we elected you, congratulations, you'll come to the flag raisings and call it a night. No, we have to say, what are you doing for our people, especially the poor people?
I know you talk about mayors, and I remember you ran for mayor, and we haven't had
Twice.
this discussion around it. But I wanted to pick it back on this topic because I think it's something that we've been talking more and often in especially in the immigrants' rights movement, which is like it is about time to go and do 501c4s. It is about time to start thinking about local politics. Should we do that? Should we do that? And I remember telling you this. I remember saying to a couple of people, if he wins, I will believe in the election system.
Yeah,
I'm super hesitating to believe and to think that local politics are gonna be or are open for our community. And you growing up in Roselle, you were one of the most radicals candidates that I saw it. People in New Brunswick has been running like across the bridge. It's been running for years against 37 years against this mayor, and it never happens. And it's just the machine is just there. And let's not talk about the South, and let's not talk about other cities, but does what take you? What did you take about that when you run for mayor and it didn't happen, and it happens twice, and they play you bad, and all this system that is corrupt to not let people that speak about our rights, that speak about our people, that is for our people, and you still believe it, you're still going to run, and you say, no, next year I'm going to do it. How many years do we have to do it?
Well, I'm happy you brought that up. I served on the school board for 9 years in Roselle. And one of the promises that I told my people is that I would stand with them no matter what. I would prioritize their interests over the other interests that were happening. I learned a lot. And I remember the time when I stood against a development project that would have raised the taxes, that would have literally gave all this property over to some of these developers and made all these people rich while our town was going to suffer the most. I stood up against that project. And when I voted no and I pushed back against it, I became a target. And they came up with a plan to remove me from the board. I tried to fight it in court. I didn't have enough money, so I had to let it go by. But what I will say is, I know that I am here today because of what people did in this country for 400 plus years, for the sacrifice that they did and the path that they paved for me. Black people, indigenous people, workers, people who believed in justice. And so for me, I have to believe that when I run for mayor and I raise issues and I stand up with my community, I might not always achieve the goal of winning, but I know that I'm creating a path for someone else who's going to come and to win and to champion those issues moving forward.
Open the window.
So I think that we have to constantly not only be short term, we have to come up with our short term plan, but we can't be selfish because we have to remember that our work today is for the next generation. When they say, I remember my uncle running, I remember my aunts running, my grandfather running, and these are issues that are still standing and we're going to win. We have to remain hopeful despite whatever happens. Now, the second part is organizers love to organize. We love to mobilize. We love to do this, but there are two things that we don't do well. We don't raise money from the people. Right? We rely on these foundations and we rely on these and that's good. But we have to get the people involved in investing in their movement too. And this is why I love ULA. I think ULA has a great opportunity to be a different organization in the state of New Jersey because we can get the people to invest in their future. The second piece is we have to brace the political process of running our people. We don't have an actual machine. We have people say, I want to run. Oh, run. Good. I'll do a recording of video. I'll do a social media post. No, we should be having trainings after trainings. Every 6 months, we should have trainings and teaching people how to be candidate, how to represent, how to write their paperwork, how to raise money. And if we don't do it, you know what we end up doing? We end up giving them over to these parties and these political folks who are shaping them in their own interest to never, ever work for their people, but to only work for contractors, engineers, law firms, and all these other developers. And then we say, oh, they sold out. What did we offer them? We didn't have no planning. We don't have no training. We don't have no development. And we definitely ain't giving no money. Then how the hell do we get it accomplished? So we have to critique our movement.
Exactly. No, I agree. I mean, and I think that the giving that a space as well is that the little space, open those windows, we always create a path for the next generations, you know. And this is the first time that I want to let you know that in almost 30 plus years or 40 plus years in Jamesburg, you had a Latino that is going to be part of the board the first time.
Gracias a Dios.
So let's go back to, I had a couple things, and I know Jorge is gonna pull my time, but I want to talk about mass incarceration, and I have this here, and I want to share with folks this. You know, some of the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, they did a research with Rutgers University, and they talk about the criminal justice system is so corrupt that they never tell us these little things, right? And I want to see what you think about this. The system holds almost 2 million people in 1,566 state prisons. 1,566 state prisons. The 102 federal prisons. So this number is going up. every 2 or 3 years. This means that there's more jails and schools building. There's more people incarcerating the after school programs. There's more people that is not doing art. There's more people being in jail and put it in jail and creating supposedly programs to overcome this. 2,850 local jails. And this is what caused my attention. And it was like around 1,510 juvenile correctional facilities. And guess how many schools we have? We have 957 schools. And we have 1,500 and plus and 10 correctional facilities. We have 186 immigration detention facilities and almost 82 Indian country jails. As well, and they don't count military prisons. They don't count civil community centers. They don't count state psychiatry hospitals. Why is this so rooted in our country? Why is this so rooted on incarcerating and not just like in this case not deporting, but just incarcerating black and brown bodies and make money out of it? Why we still believe in to this day that putting people work for $2 a day, that's slavery. That's the new way to enslave our people. Why this is so rooted in America, and why and how do you think we can? It is the only way that to be a politician to change this criminal justice system.
America is the greatest nation in the world. And that's what we hear. How can you be the greatest nation in the world where you incarcerate more people than multiple major countries in the world? And not only are we incarcerating the people, but we are making profits off of their backs. So there's actually an incentive of locking people up and keeping them in jail. And this is why we need to continue educating our people to help them understand that we cannot always look down on people who are incarcerated and people who are in jail and people who are locked up. It's because there's a system that's built to ensure that they get there. And this is why when we talk about the school to prison pipeline, they study kids, they study reading, and they study writing, and they study basics. And they say, well, based on the statistics and the studies that we show, if these kids don't have this, that, and the third, they're more likely to get to jail. And that's how they make their profits, right? We have these undocumented people coming into our country, right? These are our brothers, these are our sisters. And the system says, nope, we want to get them over the border, and then we want to put them in jail, and then we want to make a bunch of money through the system of lawyers and advocates and all this other good stuff. And then guess what? We could do whatever we want with them. But I will say, like you alluded to this, it's part of America has been so wealthy because of enslavement. America's wealth was based on the enslavement of Black people. And because there's not a form of chattel slavery happening right now, the incarceration system and our criminal justice system is the means of continuing that wealth building for a few. And that's why I always say, if people are serious if you don't want to do it for the human rights reasons, do it for the economic reasons, because you're paying for people to stay in detention centers and in these jails.
The state and federal prisons population has increased by more than 700% in the past 5 years just in the United States. I found this interesting, and I want to put this because we put in this in Spotify. 4.7 million individuals who are on probation or parole, or thousands locked up in immigration detention facilities. So that's like, those numbers to me are incredible. And what gets me more mad is that sometimes you think that because you're growing, and I have a daughter, right? And I always think about that, because you're moving, because this is changing. You think the world is changing, and you think it's going to be a little bit better, and you think it's going to be a little bit more, people that is going to be more social conscious about it, and you're going to make more people changing this. But this is just growing and growing, and nobody talks about this. And that's why we want to start keeping these shows, talking about this, talking about these issues that are so important for our community.
And let me add this: even when it comes down to the gun violence issue, we have solutions to reducing gun violence in every major city in this country. But what you don't have is the investment into those solutions of interrupters, of people taking proactive steps and disrupting some of what's happening in the communities. In every one of these communities where we hear about all this shooting, it's always a few shooters. Everybody's not shooting. It's not even a gang thing. Sometimes it's an emotional thing. Something happens on social media. People are trying to respond, and we have the programs. And this is why I love the work that we do with Live Free. It's because the models are there. But this is the first time in America's history where they finally started to invest in a program. And they gave it just a few millions. But really, this program should have been implemented years ago. So for every problem that we have in America, we have a solution. What we don't have is the will. We don't have the people who have the will to buck the parties, to buck the special interest groups, and to get down to the bottom of it and say, this is what we have to do for our community because it's the right thing to do and it's the right thing to do with the future. And the last thing I will say is one of the issues that we have in our political system is we have a bunch of disconnected people. They're older, they're disconnected, they're not black, they're not brown. They don't come from marginalized communities. They don't come from poverty.
Privilege.
They are privileged. They're wealthy. They're multimillionaires, and they're getting even richer because some of those PPP loans they got millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars just forgiven, while some of the student loans can't even get forgiven.
So to start wrapping it up, Archange, I was gonna say Jorge, but that's Jorge Terreros. I wanted to start encourage people that is listening to us to also visit our website. We just have our website as well, RadioJornaleraNewJersey.org. Keep sharing in our social media. Keep visiting our social media. Keep sharing and let us know what do you think about this interviews. And to start closing, what do you think about independent media? Why we need to have independent media? Should we keep having Fox News and 105.1 radios? Why it is important to create independent media?
Yeah, so independent media is so important. During the 1980s, there was a actual effort by a handful of people to consolidate power and to buy all the local mediums and TV stations and radios. Clear Channel is a prime example. They own vast majority of all radio stations. And so when you have such a monopoly on TV and radio, then guess what you have? One message, no multiplicity of voices. And so radio stations like Radio Jornalera, I'm always correctly pronouncing it. Jornalera. It's so important because we're not here giving a filter. You're not here telling me what I can and cannot say. And I think more of our people need to have an opportunity to hear diversity of opinions, hear voices who are talking about the issues that they care about and ways that we can push them to get right and so that we can change our situations. The last thing I would just say is that everybody who's listening and who's listening into this radio station, give, donate, support. We can't do it alone. You have to give. Even if you say, I don't have a lot of money, give $1 today.
We need even $1.
Even $1. Everybody has to give if you're serious about movement building, because this is organizing. This is politics. This is elections. And it has to be looking as a pie that everybody has a slice and not just one big picture. It's a pie. We're all doing it, but the people have to give and the demand has to be there.
So let's keep fighting to find ways to bridge this gap between our racial, economic, and immigration justice movements. Let's keep find ways to build bridges between Black and brown communities and other communities, I think marginalized communities. Let's keep doing independent social media. Let's keep fighting. I want to appreciate this moment for you to be here. I want to appreciate this moment, Archange, and from all this project that's been there for the people and from the people. Thank you for taking this invitation, and we would like to, we always I like to do this close up with couple small questions, and you can answer with either one word or one sentence at most.
Okay.
If it will be a law that you can create that the whole world will follow, what will be the law?
The law, law. If the law can penetrate the hearts of people, it would be to make illegal all forms of discrimination.
Jails. You can either answer with one sentence, no more than one sentence, please. Jorge is talking at us. So no more than one sentence, and don't think too much. Something that just come up to your brain. So yeah,
we need to revamp the entire jail system.
Trump.
He needs to go to jail.
Jesus.
We need to reclaim the real revolutionary, radical, liberation-oriented Jesus.
Religion.
Religion can no longer be a stumble block, but we must find a way to embrace others in our religious practice.
Spirituality.
It is the key to life.
Your mom.
My love.
People that are atheists and they don't believe in God.
They're still God's people, and I love them with all my heart.
United States of America.
I love this country, and that's why I criticize the hell out of it.
Capitalism.
There's other ways.
Socialism.
There's other ways.
Biden.
He needs to call it one day. One term and move on.
Police.
They need to go.
Black.
Beautiful.
ICE.
Go to hell.
And something that you want to tell the people that has took the time to listen to us.
Sisters and brothers and people of all inspirations, I want to let you know that I love you with all my heart and my soul. To not give up, to believe in yourself, to believe in your family, to believe in your skin, to believe in your power, and to get out of your own way and to find ways to love other people. Let's listen to our kids. Our kids have the vision. They have the future. They know how to work with others. They know how to step outside their comfort zone. Believe in the kids. Support the kids. Encourage the kids. They are the future. And if we're going to change this world, we can't do it alone. We're going to need each other.
We're going to come back next month. Vamos a regresar el próximo mes con este programa Desde el Sur con Jorge Torres. Muchas gracias por estar aquí. Les mandamos un fuerte abrazo. I wanted to close with this that I never said, but I'm going to start saying. Donate. Go to www.radiojornalera.newjersey.org. Make a donation. And I wanted to also thank to all the people and all the team that is working and that is making possible this radio station, that is making possible Radio Jornalera, to go to your houses, to go to your room, to go to your speaker, to put people in, create content, to put things in social media. Thank you so much, Archange, for taking your time. I know we're taking more than 1 hour that we told you, but we appreciate you and thank you so much. And thank you, Jorge, for helping us in Los Controles.
Thank you, Jorge.
Bye,
thank you, everyone who put this together. Appreciate you.
Somos el vínculo para educar, empoderar y organizar a las comunidades migrantes. Queremos defender nuestros derechos civiles y humanos. Si eres estudiante, jornalero, trabajadora doméstica o te interesa conocer más sobre tus derechos, síguenos en nuestras diferentes plataformas. Somos Radio Jornalera New Jersey.